In today's episode, we are going to add the jumping ability to our 3D character. We are going to download an animation from mixamo.com. Then we are going to ask ChatGPT to write the sketch that will check for the swipe controls. And without any further ado, let's dive right in. First of all, we need to download the animation from mixamo.com. I've already selected the same character that I'm using. And under the animations tab, let's search for running jump. Then we can pick up any of these animations. And we are going to use root motion, which means that the animation will drive the character. We're not going to write any line of code. Let's download it using the download button. Make sure to select FBX for Unity, and we don't need the skin. Then let's hit download. Next, we have to import it in our project by dragging the jump animation, and let's put it under the player folder. Before we can use it, we have to change some settings. Under rig, make sure to change the animation type from generic to humanoid. Then let's hit apply. When we have applied the running animation, Unity created this animator controller that we can open up by double-clicking on it. And here we have the animator window. By default, the player is running. So to use our jump animation, we have to drag it under the animator window. Then we need to make a transition from running to jump that we can control whenever we make an up swipe. We have to right-click, then make transition, and select the jump animation. And the way we transition from one animation to another is by creating a condition. If you press this plus button, we have this message, parameter does not exist in controller. In fact, we have to create a parameter to control it. Under the parameters tab, let's add a new one. We have a float. Normally we use it to change the speed of the player. In my case, I'm going to use a trigger so that we can switch to the jump animation. And let's call it jump. Then we can select the transition again. And from the inspector, we'll be able to select this trigger so that we can activate this transition. But we need to get back to the running animation. As soon as we finish the jump animation, we need to make a transition from the jump animation to the running animation. And in this case, you don't have to set a condition. By default, the player will transition back to running as soon as this animation is finished, and that's what we want. At this point, we haven't talked about the player inputs. We can activate this trigger from the animator window. To do that, we need to drag it under this area so that we can see our game view. By default, the player is running, and each time we activate this trigger, the player jumps, but we have few issues. The player is a little bit moving to the left side, and the way we fix that is by selecting the jump animation, and under animation, here we have something that is called bake into pose. If you select the first option, we are going to enable root transform rotation bake. The same thing, we have to fix the Y position and make sure that the based upon is set to original. By default, the player is running, and if we set this trigger, he jumps. We can set it again. We're going to change it from the code later on. To check whether we have an up swipe, we activate this trigger. But first of all, I'm going to show you some parameters. If you select the transition, we have this option has exit time. Make sure to uncheck it so that we can immediately transition from the running animation to the jump animation. And under settings, we have some other parameters like the transition duration. Make sure to play around with this parameter to get the best results. And let's give it another try. And there you go, the player jumps. Now we want to read the user inputs so that we can set this trigger whenever we have an up swipe and so on. To make it easier for us, I'm going to use this tool. Probably you have heard about it. It's an AI model that you can ask it whatever you want. I've already created a video on how to use this tool. So let's ask it a question like, hey ChatGPT, I'm making an endless runner game using Unity. So write me a C# script to check for swipe controls. And by pressing the enter button, you will get the result that you want. We have this C# script, which is called swipe controller. Now we can copy it using copy code and go back into Unity. We have to right click, create C# script, and we have to give it the same name, swipe controller. By double clicking on it, we can open it up in Visual Studio Code. Then let's use Ctrl A and Ctrl V to paste it under the update function, which is called over and over again. We have these lines of code like debug.log. Whenever we make a left swipe, we will see this message, left swipe detected. To check if this script is working just fine, I'm going to use Ctrl S to save it. Then we need to add it to our project. I'm going to drag it under the player and hit play. Then if we move the mouse to the right side, we have right swipe detected. The same thing for the left one. It seems to be working just fine, but I think they haven't added the up and down swipe detection. We can get back to ChatGPT and ask it to fix that. Hey ChatGPT, the up and down swiping doesn't work. Can you fix it? And hit enter again. And there you go. We have this apologies. Then let's get back to the script and use Ctrl A, Ctrl V. And let's give it another try. We have up swipe detected. The same thing for down, left and right. So it is working. Finally, we can set this trigger whenever we have an up swipe. To do that, we can access the animator component. Because we have the swipe controller attached to the same object that has the animator, we can get back to the code, and under up swipe detected, we can use a built-in function which is called getComponent. This takes in the name of the component that we want, and it is the animator component. Then we add dot set trigger to set the trigger. This function takes in the string, which is the name. In our case, it is called jump. And let's hit play again. So I think that's all for this video. I hope you like it. Now we can jump using the swipe controls. In the next video, we'll be able to move it left and right using the right and the left swiping. So if you have any question or comment, make sure to write it under the comment section down below. And I will see you in the next one.